Oh,
Hi.
no.
Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Mike Lyons with Seasoned Advice HR, and this is Healthcare Leadership Live. And this show is all about healthcare leaders learning how to be more effective. And I like to have guests on Healthcare Leadership Live who can help you learn how to be a better leader to help elevate your clinic. And there's nothing more important, I think, than who you bring into your clinic as a new hire. And so for today, I wanted to bring in someone who is an expert at hiring for clinical healthcare. His name is Sean DeVore. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here. Happy to be here for your guests and you. This is fun.
Yeah. Um, and as always, the show is brought to you by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help clinical healthcare practices um, hire and retain better. And so, yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Also, before we get going, if anyone is watching live on LinkedIn, you can ask a question to us or make a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Any of the comments that you put into the LinkedIn feed, we'll see them and then we can talk about them. So don't hesitate to even just say hi. So, with that, Sean, tell us about what you do and why do you do it?
So I think of myself as a matchmaker. I've owned a recruiting firm for the last 16 years, and we really help companies bridge the gap in finding talent. Um, Today, it's really difficult to find people because, you know, essentially everyone thinks, well, you place an ad and you're going to get a great person, but that's not really how it works. So we've done a lot of that either in the States, but also getting remote people here, US, and also from overseas.
Mm. Yeah, that seemed the kind of post and pray method is the prevailing technique that I think most businesses use, and that's worked a lot of the time for folks, but it doesn't necessarily always work. And so, thinking about that, you know, always thinking about how can we help clinical healthcare businesses recruit better? What's one thing that they can do beyond just kind of post and pray, or something that they can do to help improve the way that they hire?
As simple as this sounds, pick up the phone, right? Like old school works. You know, when you see a resume or somebody you might be interested, don't just email them. You know, text them, call them. You know, people they want that. They crave to be communicated with. You know, directly. And unfortunately, the electronic way seems sort of cold and it just doesn't have any warmth.
Hmm. You know what? That's great advice. And now I'm thinking, I just sent a message to a candidate earlier, and I'm like, "Oh god, I'm kicking myself because I should have just called them." And that's my inclination too. I think especially when you get a candidate, and this was a candidate who looked like a great person, I just didn't have time in the moment to pick up the phone. And so I will totally call this person later on because you're right. When you get a phone call, that's important. These days, no one calls anybody, right?
100%. It's a lost art, right? The warmth, and you could do a quick text too. Texting's fantastic, but it unfortunately just so many people rely on put an ad, hope they come, and those people are not passive. Those people are not, you know, they're most of those people are leaving a job because they have a problem. The people you want to get are the people that aren't burnt out, that have a passion for the job, that love what they do. They love, healthcare. They want to help people. I mean, those are the clients that we and the candidates we want to get for our clients.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell me about that. I think passive job seekers, that's something that a lot of clinics don't they don't have time to do, or they think they don't have time to do. Is that something that you recommend that healthcare clinics, kind of dabble into, is looking at these job seekers or, job candidates that may not actively be job seeking?
Absolutely. The quality is a huge difference. I mean, if you're getting somebody that isn't desperate or isn't necessarily in the hunt, you know, there that's amazing. And what we've done to do that, because it's so labor intensive, right? I mean, you really do have to make a lot of phone calls, a lot of texts, and a lot of emails. Is I have a team offshore that we're excellent at literally doing the, very labor intensive process. If you can do it in your own office, I think it's great. Even if you can do a small amount, maybe a half hour, 20 minutes, but it's a huge difference. A candidate thanked me and said, I'm really happy I got your call today. That just made me feel really good. And I was able to submit that person. And my client was like, wow, where did you find this person? They would not have found that person just like from
Hmm.
an email or something because they wouldn't have responded. So it takes a little more effort, but the warmth and the kindness, I think, really shows through in that relationship. And that's what they want for their offices, the medical offices. They want
Hmm.
somebody that's still going to show the patient, you know, caring, and they're happy to be there. Not they're burnt out on their job, which
Hmm.
unfortunately is a lot of people. So
Yeah, a lot of times when someone's applying to a job with a clinic, that's a person who is trying to run away from something, or um, they may not be seeking a better fit. They're just trying to kind of get away from a bad situation, or maybe they're in a performance problem, and they're realizing I got to get out of here. And so, not everyone, but to your point, looking for people who aren't necessarily looking. It can be a smart strategy. And just as you said, I've done some of that, and it is super time consuming to go through resumes and reaching out to people and then keeping track of who you messaged and everything. It can be very time consuming to do that, but you can find good people that way.
it's just it does take more effort, but again, we really want to find out when we're talking to that candidate, do you have a passion for this? Is this something you really want to do?
Mm,
And will you stick with it? That's the other thing that the employers don't ask. Are you willing to make like a 1 to 2 year commitment minimum? I don't want to, have a candidate submitted for my company that's going to be there for 3 months, 6 months. It looks horrible, and it's also destructive for their business. So that's something they really need to lean in on. Are they willing to make a commitment? And I know with millennials, other people right now, there's this sense of, I got to move on. I got to keep jumping from the next ladder to
mm.
the next ladder. But you're doing yourself an injustice because you're not building a relationship and you're not learning. So those are the candidates I want that will hopefully make at least a 1 to 2 year commitment.
What I hear from a lot of healthcare administrators is they'd be happy if people would just show up for the job interview. So I'm sure with how you go through your phone screen and stuff, that you probably get better show rates, I'm guessing.
We do, and we do something like we have a lot of touches. So when we try to find a candidate, we reach out to a candidate at least 5 times within like 2 weeks. So
Mm.
it's again because maybe they have a bad day in between. Once we get the candidate, we don't only send that candidate there, we check with them before the day before they're interviewing and an hour before to make sure they're going to show up.
Wow.
Nothing's worse for that hiring manager than to be waiting for that person. It disrupts their whole day. So we'd rather cancel that interview, either reschedule it or find somebody else. That in itself is a huge deal because it's so bad for the hiring manager. So if they could do that or they need somebody to do that for them, I highly recommend that.
Mm. Well, now my brain is exploding a little bit as an HR professional, because no one really has time to do all those touch points. And so now I'm sure there are some automated tools out there that can help with that kind of stuff. But what you're talking about is definitely amazing, because you're right. No one wants to have their time, wasted with candidates not showing up and all that good stuff. Um, and I love your question about, hey, are you willing to stay? When I'm doing a phone screen or an interview, I'm definitely looking for markers that are going to indicate if this person is going to stick around or not. Are there any specific things that you can look for, or that you would recommend people look for, that might indicate, beyond just asking, hey, are you going to stick around? Are there things that you would say to look for that might indicate this is a person that, might be a better fit for a long term?
We ask a simple question: why are you doing what you're doing?
Mm,
Why not something else? And if they just say it's a paycheck, or they just say, well, seems like this is interesting, no, that's not good enough. Because if I'm a patient coming into that office, I want to know that this person's going to treat me like a family member. They're going to care about me. And whether it's assisted living, any type of thing, again, I want them to think of, is this my mother? Is this my grandmother? So if they're not compassionate, and again, they don't have that, I'm in it because I love to help people, they're not the right person for us. And it doesn't matter what we recruit for, whether it's somebody that's like a medical malpractice attorney, whether it's an RN, whether it's an LVN, LPN, a caregiver, a doctor. We still want that same love and that passion. And if they can't find it because they have a lot going on in their life, we tell them, look, take a breath, show your best foot, put your best foot forward. Because if you're not going to show them that this is what you really love to do, why do they want to bring you on? Who wants to bring on somebody that is just going to, take up space? It's just, and from an HR perspective, those are the people that get written up. Those are the people that have issues on performance or PIPs, things like, that are hard for you to deal with. You obviously, if you don't have as many problems, you can then be proactive and make the environment better for the culture.
yeah, and to your point, it's when that moment of hiring, that is really when you either add to your culture or you subtract from your culture. And you just hit it right on the head there. It's the questions you ask, it's the people you hire, it's the diligence that you go through. And you can step in some serious dog doo-doo with the wrong person. With the wrong hire. That makes me think about reference checking. How important do you think it is to check references on new hires?
Extremely important. I mean, they give you the references, but if you get a bad reference, you're like, how is this possible? Because this person gave me the reference, and then there's something questionable. But we try to ask them, not just or did they show up?
Mm,
Why? How are they a member of your team? How do they add to your business? We
mm.
want to hear stuff like that. Would you hire them again or recommend them for another company? Like, if they're not going to recommend them, and they were like, yeah, they did okay job, big red flag, because now they're going to probably get a PIP. They're going to get other things. It's going to cost them money. Maybe they'll get a lawsuit, other things that, again, you have to deal with, Mike. So again, we do try to do that, and look, is how we can prevent those problems in the future, so we don't have the wonderful HR people like you having to, do all the fixes later.
That's right. I'm here to clean up all those messes from all those bad hires that happen. um, you're exactly right. So yeah, reference checking is important. I had one time I was checking a reference on a candidate, and you know, people. The common thing I hear from managers about checking references is, why bother? They gave us the reference. It's probably someone great. But as you just said, references are not always great. Sometimes they'll be very honest with you. And when I had one, multiple times really, people were very clear, man, this is not someone that I would really recommend. And when I'm giving a reference too, I keep it factual, but I try to make sure that person understands, whether this was a good employee or not. Especially if it's someone local in my community, like I want that in return. I want that honesty in return. So I'm a fan of being factual, but not whitewashing on a reference.
That honesty is hard to get, so that's really cool that you're willing to, because
Yeah.
again, we ask for it, but you don't always get it. And again,
Mm,
when they say they're only eligible for rehire, that shakes my. I mean, look, I understand some companies can't give like any information,
Yeah.
but then I want more than one, and I want
Mhm.
to know, you know, did they have enough of a relationship to say, well, what were their duties, this and that? But if they're so clear and they're just like, yeah, they're eligible for rehire, we can't talk about them. I
Yeah.
just sort of scratch and go, well, I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think there's enough there.
Yeah, for me, my standard is generally I want at least one enthusiastic reference, and from a credible person. And that's a key thing. Is like a lot of times people don't think about who you're talking to, but who are you talking to? Are you talking to a peer? Are you talking to a boss that hardly remembers them, doesn't know them? Is the reference that you're talking to, are they themselves able to communicate effectively? And sometimes you're talking to someone, you're like, I don't really care what this person's opinion is. Like, I don't really respect the information that they're sharing because it doesn't sound super credible. So you kind of have to grill that reference to some extent to understand, do they really know this person, and are they someone I want to listen to? Um, let's see here. So yeah, we talked about, yeah, that's key stuff. One thing that you have a lot of experience in is working with people remotely and even not here in the United States. And that's becoming incredibly popular. And there's a good reason, because there are great people overseas and there are great people in all kinds of locations that can do great things for your healthcare practice, but they just don't happen to be located in your city where they can come in the office. And so, what's been your experience working with remote staff and especially people overseas? And would you encourage clinical businesses to explore that?
Yeah, we've had a tremendous experience. We sort of got into this by accident. Someone had recommended somebody from overseas, and I was very hesitant. And I said, absolutely not. Heavy accent is probably not going to work for my business. And we fell in love with it. They were so incredible, and they did such a great job. And so we ended up hiring this person, and they were an RN, and they're U.S. certified, but they're in the Philippines. And
Mm,
we found that there's so many people that are so customer service. They really care. They're so warm, and so we have a tremendous staff that's overseas, and it's worked really well for our clients. Not only saving money. Saving money is the obvious, right? But it's the commitment level. It's always showing up, being that attitude, like we were sort of talking about before. Um, and then putting those resources for those practices in other areas. So instead of, let's say, if we can save a practice, like a medical practice, I don't know, 60% on the hire, 70%, they can hire another front office person. So when that person meets the person at the desk, they're getting somebody right there that's there. They're not short staffed like in the office, where a lot of times they have to go so lean in the office because it's so expensive to hire locally. And
mm,
we've done, again, all different positions. We've also done in the US too, where we've had other states, people in Texas for California, somebody in Vermont that was working in Washington State, right? And it opens up a huge pool. And I think before COVID, it wasn't really a thing. Now it's definitely a thing. Now, I'm not saying you can't replace everybody virtual. No, you have to have people that are in your office, but it's nice to have a blend and have those other resources. And they can do so many different things that blows your mind. Everything from marketing to scribing to, you know, giving like a patient results for like a test,
mm.
to monitoring remotely through like for things like Medicare and other things. It's just incredible the resources that are out there if one's willing to be open to it.
Mm. And I love that, exactly as you said, you initially were hesitant. And I hear that from a lot of people. They say, you know what, I've had some bad experiences with customer service and heavy accents, and I just don't think I would ever want to hire overseas. But, I know a CPA firm that hires people in the Philippines who have a comparable sort of certification. And those folks are crushing it, and they are doing really good work. And so sometimes it's a behind the scenes role, sometimes it's a role that's communicating directly with patients or other employees. And like you said, it sounds like it's really just make the right hire. And there are definitely people out there. Would you agree with that?
100%. And we've done things like for a medical malpractice, we got an attorney that's in the Philippines working with large, they have like, I don't know, 20 clinics across the United States, and they need an in-house attorney. They have an in-house. So they got an attorney that's in the Philippines. And this person, yeah, they're not going to file the document. They're not going to appear in court, but all the background stuff that they're able to do. And we were able to save them like 80%, which
Mm,
is tremendous, right? I mean, we have people that do like a lot of the accounting, like you were talking about, that work for big companies like Ernst and Young and stuff like that, and they're overseas. So I definitely feel the quality is so good if you're open to it. But it's again goes back to that thing I talked in the beginning about being a good matchmaker.
mm,
If you're not really making the match, it doesn't matter where they're coming from. You need good people,
mm.
whether they're local, whether they're somewhere in the US, whether they're remote. That's the key.
Yeah. Well, I know for sure that, if you're struggling with people to just show up for interviews, you're probably going to have a very different experience hiring people in the Philippines, for example. And my guess is they show up, they're motivated because they know that they have a good opportunity. Would you say that's true?
That is true, but I would even go a step farther. I personally go to the Philippines, right? I'm there once or twice a year.
Mm,
We have over 60 people that are there. So it's actually knowing each of those people, knowing who are their families, who are their spouses, who are their kids. The same way you would invest in somebody in a local office,
yeah.
whether it's a clinic or a doctor, you need to treat them the same. There is no difference. So if you're using, nothing wrong with an Upwork or something like that, but you're not making that personal relationship, which is really going to have that person, you know, go work hard for you and give the best that they can for your
Mm,
practice so your business is thriving. I mean, that's it. People first, right? Is what I think. And that's, but again, a lot of people don't do that. They're not willing to go to, South America, Philippines. I personally do that for my business. And that's why the relationships are the first thing we really care about.
mm. I love that. And I think, when I remember talking with you the first time we met, and you told me that you would go overseas and talk to your team, and you kind of shared this philosophy, I thought, man, that's amazing. And no wonder you have the kind of quality that you do, because that's what I tell managers, in the US, like walk around, talk to your team, go visit them, learn about what's going on with them, learn about their family, build a relationship. And I love that you are doing it with your team, no matter where they are on the globe. And that just kind of speaks to good leadership, I think.
Even so simple as if you have somebody in Texas and you don't break bread with them and they're working for you, or you don't personally meet them, you don't shake your hand, what type of relationship are you building, right? I mean, what type of
Mm,
commitment level are you going to get from that person? So I always tell people, even if they're local and they hire somebody, spend 10 minutes and go to coffee with them. Like maybe
mm,
go to a Starbucks, try to get some time, you know, let them feel that you care about them, because that's really going to be the difference. And they're going to show your business how they're going to give them their best
mm.
in the effort. But that's overseen. A lot of people don't really do that. They say, I'm too busy.
Yeah. How would you recommend, if, let's say, someone was interested in exploring how someone could help them from overseas? What would your first recommendation be for them, someone thinking about that?
I would say think about your wish list, right? Like there is no, whether it's social media, whether it's nursing, get that going. And then whether you use a company or not, you could look on LinkedIn. You can try to find those things, but then take that job description or whatever those things are, and then say, are you able to do those things? And
Mm,
have those people send videos to you. One of
mm,
the things that we do, we don't send only a resume, we send a video clip with each person that we send as an interview. Why? Because anyone from overseas, we want them to get their personality and who they're going to be. it makes a huge difference. So if you're trying to hire yourself, which is great, I think not everyone's fortunate to use an agency or chooses to, let them do a video, besides that resume and everything else, and then show their personality.
Yeah, I love that. You've got to have FaceTime. You've got to be able to see how someone communicates and how they talk, and especially if it's going to be a patient facing or even employee facing, and or even if they're not, just like you said, get a feel for their personality and how they engage with other people. This is a people business. Healthcare is a people business, and
Like one simple thing, ask if the person doesn't. We have a candidate recently that said, "How's your day going?" Right, and the person, the hiring manager, said, "Wow, like they stopped and they asked me a little bit about me."
yeah,
Those little things like that, that's what you should be picking up on when you're looking for somebody remotely.
mm,
Do they have a warmth? Are they going to add that? I know that sounds simple, but it's a huge plus for the businesses.
yeah, something as small as that, right? Can really speak volumes about the way that they deal with other people. Um, well, Sean, I have really enjoyed this conversation. I can tell that you are super passionate about what you do, and I can tell that your leadership has helped to make your business successful. Is there anything that we haven't touched on here in this conversation that you wanted to share with the healthcare leaders that are listening?
If any of your healthcare leaders, I wrote a book, I Need More Assistance, and it talks about how to make a practice not just more lean, but to you know make it more efficient. I'm thrilled to send anybody a copy of this book electronically or mail something out. I
Mm.
want to help these business owners. So it's not just about me getting more business. I want to help them. So I'm thrilled to talk to anybody, have any conversation. Please, I encourage your listeners, let me be a resource for them because I truly love what I do. And again, I'd love to help people, whether I'm making money or not. Everything comes back to you. So,
Love that. I love that outlook. How can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
if you go to SeanDeVore.com, everything that I do is talks about all of like my ventures, what I do, and how to give. So that's a great way to go there. And then that way you can see my book, you can see about my recruiting businesses, other ways that we write. We reach out to people, and I'd love to. That's a great starting point.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I will make sure to put that link into the show notes for the podcast. And
Wonderful.
yeah, Sean, thanks so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. And again, I definitely feel your HR service, what you offer, your expertise is such a plus. So again, this is so great to have this collaboration and us talking today. I really appreciate it.
100%, 100%. And, this show, Healthcare Leadership Live, is all about bringing in experts who have specialized knowledge and a different viewpoint. And you definitely have some things to add that are helpful to our audience. So if you are a listener to this show and you've enjoyed what we've had to say here today, drop a comment, drop a like, definitely follow the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And we're going to continue having great guests like Sean here and talking about leadership, HR, and healthcare process optimization. And so stay tuned for more. But for now, go out there and lead with confidence.
Thank you, Mike.